Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very interesting video that I came up with. This video's topic is going to be 10 fighters that UFC casuals worship that annoy me. Now, I know I just made a video about how shitting on casuals is a bad thing, but I can't deny that sometimes casuals have the most egregious takes in the entire MMA sphere. So I'm going to go over 10 of the fighters and some of the narratives about them that really irritate me, or some things about the fighters themselves sometimes that really irritate me. Starting with the first fighter, which is Conor McGregor. The first thing that annoys me heavily is he'll beat Chandler easy, bro. You don't understand, man. Conor McGregor's going to come back and he's going to look better than ever, and he's going to beat the dog shit out of Chandler. I can't express to you how much this irritates me. First of all, Conor McGregor is never fighting in the UFC again. I don't care what anyone says. I doubt he'll ever work out his contract negotiation with the UFC, but that's a topic for a whole nother video. If he were to fight Chandler, to say he would win easily is just, completely delusional. Could he beat Chandler? Yes. Chandler has no fight IQ. Chandler, makes stupid mistakes, and he could leave his chin wide open on a silver platter for Conor McGregor to take advantage of. But ultimately, I think, if I had to choose someone in that fight, I would probably pick Michael Chandler, just due to the fact that Conor's been out for 3 years. He's coming off a horrendous injury. But again, that's a whole nother topic for another video. I'm here to talk about the things about Conor McGregor that irritate me. Another thing that really irritates me is that fans claim that he's casual fans claim that he is an amazing wrestler just because he stuffed a few takedowns from Khabib in the third round, and he, outstruck Khabib on the feet in the third round when, in all honesty, I feel like Khabib was just playing with Conor in that third round. He wasn't even really trying to his full potential, I guess you could say, in that third round. So I just hate the narrative that's come out of that fight. There's been so many narratives that are still being regurgitated from that fight, including Khabib, which we'll get to later. But, just Conor McGregor's not a good wrestler. We all know that's been his weakness. He's been out-grappled by Dustin Poirier, been out-grappled by Khabib, and probably others. I'm not looking at his career right now, but, it just annoys the hell out of me. Let's get to another thing. Him spreading false dates for his return. Now, this isn't necessarily his fault, because he may have believed that he was actually going to fight on that date. And it more comes down to the casual fans sort of regurgitating that narrative is what really annoys me. But, just why are you going out there announcing fights when the bout agreements aren't signed and you haven't signed a new contract with the UFC yet? It's just completely horrendous. And to be quite honest, I just wish we saw a lot less of Conor McGregor these days. I could go my entire life without seeing Conor McGregor fight again. I know a lot of people will get up in arms over that comment, but I'm just really not that interested in the Conor McGregor saga anymore. So that's one narrative that, or not narrative, I guess, but one thing that needs to die is Conor McGregor taking to his Twitter, taking to his Instagram to announce fights that are not official yet. Next thing that really annoys me is that he claims that the UFC and Dana White are the best people he's ever done business with, when this is just a flat-out blatant lie. We know the UFC's manipulative, negotiating tactics, and we know that they're trying to impose their will on Conor McGregor, and just the fact that he's trying to, glaze the UFC to try to, get them into giving him what he wants to fight. It's just so annoying. I'm tired of hearing Conor McGregor switch up to completely opposite narratives of, the UFC aren't treating me right. I want to, go box and stuff like that. I want to go box in Saudi Arabia. To the UFC and Dana White are the best people I've ever done business with. They've never wronged me in any way. And it's just annoying to see the back and forth, to be quite honest with you. Next thing that really annoys me about Conor McGregor is not much about Conor McGregor. It's more about the fans. And it's the casual fans blatantly defending his substance abuse. Conor McGregor is clearly abusing substances. PEDs, he openly admitted to abusing PEDs. He's clearly on some sort of upper. We've seen so many narratives, or so many, I love the word narrative. We've seen so many interviews where Conor McGregor is just talking like an announcer. There's the one where he's, I believe he was at the boxing event for Francis Ngannou versus I don't, why can't I think of AJ, Anthony Joshua. And so this woman's interviewing him, and he's talking like an announcer. He's like, the money's in the bank, right? This is going to bring a lot of money into the bank. And he's just talking so fast, and sometimes even becomes incoherent in certain moments in interviews. And the fans are just like, oh, well, Conor's just eccentric. This is his 100th interview of the day. I mean, if this was his 100th interview of the day, you think he would be acting like he was on downers, not on methamphetamine. And then there's the most recent interview that's come out where Conor McGregor's shrugging and blinking constantly. And I'm not trying to joke about this. It's very sad. I don't like to see anyone go down that path. You know, I've had a lot of, you know, experience with stuff like that. So just the fact that, you know, Conor McGregor is going down that path and people are blatantly defending his substance abuse is just very annoying to me. The whole Mystic Mac bullshit is really annoying too. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily, you know, bad. I mean, sure, it brought a lot of attention to the sport, but it's just like, it's just kind of corny to me. I'm going to, you know, predict how this fight's going to go, and then it's going to happen that way. I mean, I guess maybe he's just going off of the openings he saw while watching tape of the opponent. I mean, it's just kind of annoying. That's not something I really want to harp on a lot, but I've never been a huge fan of that. Now, let's get to some of the things that I like about Conor McGregor and his fights. And that is that he is always in exciting fights, and he has an undeniable aura when he fights. When Conor McGregor fights, everyone gets excited. I know I said I could go the rest of my life without seeing another Conor McGregor fight, which is true. I mean, if he never fights again, I'm not going to be, you know, super disappointed. But if I see Conor McGregor randomly announced for a card, of course I'm going to be excited and want to see how that turns out. He made the sport what it is, too. I mean, the UFC would not be the UFC without Conor McGregor. And I think that's quite apparent. And I think, you know, I mean, I think he grew the sport to an immeasurable amount. I mean, if you ask anyone, like, if you walk up to any random person on the street and you ask them to name a UFC fighter, chances are they're going to name Conor McGregor or John Jones. Unless they've watched, you know, some other fights, and they may name a George St. Pierre or anything like that. But Conor McGregor, the most widely known UFC athlete and the highest paid MMA athlete of all time, and just made the fucking MMA what it was. His random Twitter voice memos always crack me up. That's another thing about Conor McGregor, is he, whether intentional or not, makes me laugh. Which I think is, you know, something great for the sport. I mean, I think, you know, when we have a fighter that adds humor to his or her fights, it honestly makes you more excited to see what they're going to say on the mic after or before. And he's funny. He was funny as hell in Roadhouse. I mean, if you haven't watched Roadhouse, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a great movie. It is cheesy, but Roadhouse is kind of those kinds of movies that are meant to be cheesy. It's kind of a cheesy action flick. That's kind of what it is. So if you go into that just expecting an entertaining movie, it is very entertaining. Some of the CGI was kind of shit, but that's besides the point. You know, he was funny as hell in the movie. Let's move on to the next fighter that does annoy me, which is Alex Pereira. And now this one's going to come way out of left field. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I mean, not a lot, because no one knows my channel even exists. But I do think if anyone sees this and they're a big Alex Pereira fan, they're going to disagree with me on a lot of these points. But Alex Pereira doesn't annoy me a lot like Conor McGregor heavily annoys me. He just annoys me very slightly. And it's not even Alex Pereira himself. It's the narratives about Alex Pereira that the casual fans spread. People like to act like he will murder everyone he fights, and basically alludes to the fact, or not the fact, alludes to, you know, the idea that he's invincible, which is just completely false. He got flatline KO'd by Israel Adesanya, and he's been flatline KO'd in kickboxing as well. I think he's a very talented fighter. I love watching his fights, but he is not invincible by any means. But the casual fan base loves to paint him out as this unbreakable fighter. Fans always act like he has otherworldly power, or as I like to call it, the touch of death. Oh, you can't get touched by Alex Pereira's left hook or you're going to sleep. That's just not true. Jan Blachowicz ate many left hooks. Israel Adesanya ate many left hooks. He does have a lot of KOs by the left hook, but people act like if you get touched by it, you're instantly going to sleep, which is just not true whatsoever. His kickboxing accolades is also another annoying thing about, you know, people that, you know, tend to big up Alex Pereira. People act like his kickboxing accolades are amazing, and he is the only two-division glory kickboxing champion. But kickboxing records are so shallow. Half of the guys, you don't even know who they are, and they're just easy fights for their champion. And it's just kind of like, it's the easiest of the, MMA sports to get, a good run in, I guess that you could say. There's been many kickboxers that just have no success in the UFC. Sure, he's at the elite level. Sure, he has a very impressive kickboxing resume. But people like Joe Rogan and the casual fans tend to harp on that, and it kind of annoys me a little bit. Now, things I like about Alex Pereira, there's a lot more things I like than things I dislike. Never in a boring fight. Underdog/inspiring story. Alex Pereira has one of the most inspiring stories of any MMA fighter I think I've ever seen. I mean, dude was an alcoholic who worked in a tire shop, and now he's a two-division UFC world champion. I mean, just completely mind-boggling if you think about that. He has a good sense of humor. A lot of these guys, I feel like they try too hard, like Israel Adesanya, who we'll also get to. I feel like they try too hard to, make you laugh or whatever. And I feel like Alex Pereira is just genuinely funny. He's made me laugh on many different occasions on, online videos and such. Best leg kicks in MMA, in my opinion. A lot of people like to bring up, Justin Gaethje or even Jonathan Martinez or Jan Blachowicz. I think Alex Pereira has the best leg kicks in MMA. They're powerful, they're fast, they're not telegraphed. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for them because everyone's so focused on the left hook. And he's active. I love when a champion's active. I love when they're not holding up the division. I love when they're just taking the next fight. And, I mean, he even wants to turn around, a month from, his fight at UFC 300, maybe even less time. I don't know the exact time frame, but I just love how active he is. I love that we get to see a lot of his fights. And also the memes, man. I mean, he's just a funny guy. There's a lot of different Alex Pereira memes, I guess you could call them, like the fucking Easter Island head. And, it's just, people go on for days about memes about Alex Pereira. But let's move on to the next fighter that some narratives I find annoying about, and this guy in particular just annoys me, which is Sean Strickland. Oh, this guy annoys me heavily. He has extreme incel-like behavior. He hates women. He believes they should be in the kitchen. He believes women are objects, which is just, I mean, dude, just go back to the 1700s, please. We don't need you here right now. And I'm not trying to be some sort of cancel culture-esque, YouTuber, but I mean, seriously, some of the stuff he says is just so distasteful. I very much I don't know. I don't want to say dislike him as a person, but I just think there's some stuff he says that's very distasteful and I wouldn't agree with. And he has no tolerance for differing opinions. If you believe something different than Sean Strickland, I mean, he doesn't like you. He won't respect you. He won't give you any respect, which I think is just completely egregious. I mean, he was attacking reporters at, UFC 296, I believe, or UFC 297 in Canada. He was just attacking different promoters on the media day, which is just disgraceful from a UFC fighter. Won't move on from the Duplessis fight. I mean, dude lost the Duplessis fight back in January, and he still talks about it to this day about how he won that fight. And he started this really annoying narrative about how if you don't, decisively beat a champion, it should always go to the champion, which is just complete bullshit. I mean, the last thing we need in the UFC is more preferential treatment, and preferential treatment to champions would just be terrible, in my opinion. Spreads false narratives and misinformation. Kind of touched on that already, but there's just so many different false narratives that he likes to spread around the MMA community. I mean, even about Ian Gary, he's one of the biggest people that spreads misinformation about Ian Gary and his wife. He gets most of his popularity comes from hate. I mean, he just, loves to spread hate to other groups of people or singular people, and then he gets fans from it, which is just, I mean, that's less of a dig on Sean Strickland and more of a dig at the MMA fan base in a whole, because why are we supporting this type of behavior? I mean, if Sean Strickland wants to believe what he wants to believe, fine. But the fact that so many people are, supporting it is just kind of distasteful in my opinion. Makes fun of others' trauma, but his is important. This is a big one. He likes to make fun of, fighters that got hit by a bus and say, oh, well, he can't dodge a bus, so what makes you think he can dodge a punch? And he died literally 2 days ago, and his family's still grieving, and He loves to, make fun of child abuse. And then when Duplessis brings it up, he goes on Theo Von's podcast and cries, which is just like so bipolar of him. And that leads me to my next point, is that he makes fun of men's mental health and says men should not cry under any occasion, and then goes and does it himself. I mean, this guy is so counteractive. Like, what do you believe? Like, I think Sean Strickland, I'm not going to send too much hate to his way, because I think he's a very confused person. I don't think he knows what he believes in general. So, I mean, I just think he's got maybe some mental issues, and I just hope he gets the help he needs and deserves. Things I like about Sean Strickland, he's very genuine. I mean, like him or dislike him, what you see is what you get, and I like when people are like that. I don't like the Colby Covington-esque type person where they're constantly putting on a facade. So I do like that about Sean Strickland. I love his fights. Most of his fights are very, fun to watch. The Israel Adesanya fight wasn't super fun outside of the first round, but I think it was better just because of the aura of Israel Adesanya was getting shut down in that fight. And he loves his country. I mean, listen, I'm, not saying that America is perfect, but I do think people love to shit on the country that, they've lived, excuse me. I do think people love to shit on America, and because it's the popular thing to do, and instead of shitting on America, he's focusing on how we can, fix it in his eyes anyways. I may not agree with what he thinks we should do with America, but either way, I do love that he's very patriotic, and I do love that he's, being a voice for America in a way of sorts. Let's move on to the next fighter that, certain narratives irritate me, and that is Petr Yan. This is another one I think people are really going to get angry about, but there are some things that moderately annoy me about, what the fans say about Petr Yan. People make him out like he's a Terminator, and once he gets going, you can't stop him, which is just completely false. Like, did the Merab fight not happen? Where's that Terminator-esque performance there? And I love Petr Yan. He's one of my favorite fighters, but I think people really love to harp on the idea that, he's this unstoppable fighter once he gets going. And, I mean, maybe you can say Merab didn't let him get going, whatever. But I just feel like, as of recently, we haven't really seen that, in the Song Yadong fight, we saw it a little bit, but still not to the same ability back when he had, in his prime, per se. And this is another fighter that fans act like he's invincible, like he can't win any, or can't lose any fight. And people say, he arguably still the bantamweight champion, which is another annoying narrative to me. He clearly lost the Merab fight, and people are calling him arguably still the bantamweight champion, which people have been saying for forever, and I get it. I mean, you can make an argument about the two Aljamain Sterling fights and the Sean O'Malley fight. I thought he lost the Sean O'Malley fight, but that's another thing. Fans won't seem to let go the result of the Sean O'Malley fight. I thought the Sean O'Malley fight was a robbery. I've moved past it. I'm not going to talk about it every single time Petr Yan's brought up, but so many people do, and it really irritates me. I mean, just move on. Just move on. Talk about the here and now. Stop dwelling on the past where Petr Yan is, this unbeatable figure in your eyes. But let's move on to, there is one more thing I want to talk about, and that's that people act like he's a killer, but he is a decision machine. He hasn't finished anyone since 2020. And I know you can add some context to that and say, well, he could have finished Sterling if if he didn't throw an illegal knee, and, he dropped Corey Sandhagen and this and that. But, I mean, the stats don't lie, okay? And things I like about Petr Yan, because I don't want to make this video entirely negative, he's super fun to watch, never in a boring fight. Again, has a good sense of humor. I mean, him calling, O'Malley on, whatever it was. I think it was UFC 280 fight week. Him calling him a prostitute is just fucking hilarious. I mean, just, and some stuff online I've seen here and there on fight weeks. He's just a effortlessly funny guy without putting, too much effort into it or trying to be a clown and put on a whole facade like a Colby Covington, like a Sean O'Malley. So I do enjoy his sense of humor, and he does give me a good chuckle here and there. And he builds fights without being a clown too. I mean, that kind of piggybacks off that last point, but also just his pure fight style is enough to build a fight. When you see Petr Yan on a card, you're going to get excited. I know I do. Let's go to the next fighter, which is Israel Adesanya. So this guy heavily annoys me for a lot of different reasons, but I'm just going to harp on a few narratives that the fans like to push around in this video. Izzy wasn't himself in the Strickland fight, bro. Okay. Now, Israel Adesanya looked like Israel Adesanya in that fight to me. I think Sean Strickland just poked a big-ass hole in his game that none of us saw coming, and that's his boxing. His boxing defense is terrible. His boxing all-round isn't great to begin with, and I think Strickland showed us that, and I think people just like to, defend Izzy and say, oh, he wasn't himself in that fight, bro. He'll win the rematch, and I've been guilty of this myself, but in retrospect, hindsight's 2020. He was himself. He looked like Israel Adesanya. If you rewatch any other Israel Adesanya fight and then watch that Israel Adesanya fight, he looks the same. And that leads me to my next point. He tends to go into survival mode when he's losing a fight instead of trying to put a pace on a fighter or switch it up or do different things. And people love to push this narrative around that, Izzy, once he's ahead, you can't beat him, and he'll come from behind, like in the Pereira fight when, if you rewatch that fight, I feel like Israel Adesanya was always ahead. So if you go back to a fight where he lost, like Sean Strickland or Jan Blachowicz, I feel like once he gets behind, he tends to sneak into the survival mode where he's just trying not to get meme KO'd or trying to not get submitted or, completely demolished on the scorecard. So that's something that tends to irritate me, is how fans like to act like, he'll come from behind and he'll take the win back away from you. He says so many corny lines and thinks he's a badass too. I'll leave you frozen like Elsa. Trust, just so many things that he says that just make me cringe every time I hear it. And, I don't want to hate on Izzy too much. He already gets enough hate, unwarranted hate from the fan base. But, it's just kind of annoying to me. He tends to, let me put it this way. He either goes out there and has a very exciting performance, or if he finds out that this is a formidable foe, he tends to float around and throw 10 leg kicks around. And this isn't really a narrative that irritates me, more so just something about his fights that irritate me, is that he kind of gives, this is kind of the same as the, survival mode thing. He just, even when he's ahead, if he doesn't sense that he can KO you or, win in devastating fashion, he tends to just float around and throw like 10 leg kicks around and just cruise his way to a decision. It's too easy for him to do. So let's get on to the things I like before I just go into a whole diatribe on Israel Adesanya. When he does fight to his strength, he is super exciting. Like in the second Alex Pereira fight, like in the Paulo Costa fight, both of which he simultaneously had a boob grow randomly, but we're going to ignore that fact for this video. He's super exciting in certain fights when he's really playing to his strengths and not just trying to get ahead and stay ahead. So another thing that I really like about Israel Adesanya is his striking form is a thing of beauty. And I know that sounds kind of like corny or whatever, but I do really enjoy watching Israel Adesanya's striking form. It kind of flows like water, like it's very like aesthetically pleasing striking style. When he's, turned on, I guess you could say, or really in his flow state. Let's move on to the next fighter and the last fighter on this list, which is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, two different demographics of people are going to react to this differently. A lot of people are going to be like, what do you mean Khabib's the GOAT, which is one of my points. And then another group of people are going to be like, yeah, Khabib fans can be really annoying, which is what I'm going to harp on right here. And it doesn't annoy me a lot because I tend to just ignore these groups of people at this point in time when they're just glazing Khabib nonstop. But it moderately annoys me, I would say. Not heavily, not lightly, just kind of moderately annoys me. Jesus, I just spit all over the fucking table. But one of the things that really irritates me is he never bled and he only lost 3 rounds. Like, we get it. He was a very impressive fighter in his prime. He left during his prime, so we never got to see really, someone really test him, per se. And people just love to regurgitate that narrative. While it is factual, it is just annoying how much it's, presented in the MMA community. And is the same with these next two narratives, which is he's the GOAT, bro. He's better than John Jones, which is just factually incorrect. And people just love to glaze Khabib because, he was undeniably one of the best fighters of the UFC's history. and they just like to act like, because they like Khabib more than John Jones. I do as well. But you can't deny the facts that John Jones is also undefeated and has a much more impressive resume and has been fighting for longer. And that goes with the 29-0 thing too, the undefeated, never bled, never lost, or only lost 3 rounds, all those few things can go together. And fans act like he could come back and easily become lightweight champion. It's very annoying to me because I think the lightweight division has evolved a lot since he's departed. And could he become a champion if he came back? Sure, I don't see why not. But people act like it would be easy, like he would steamroll Charles, like he would steamroll Islam Makhachev, and I just think that's completely, Khabib even openly said Islam beat him in training, I just think that, people love to look at the past and try to put it over the present, which is, kind of pointless to do. That's like, by that logic, BJ Penn could come back and be a champion. I know that's, a way different example, but still, you get what I'm saying. And another thing that people tend to do is they act like it's impossible to pass him as the greatest of all time at lightweight. He's not the greatest of all time in general, but greatest of all time in lightweight division, 100%. And people act like, oh, Islam needs, 7 more title defenses to pass Khabib, and Charles will never pass Khabib, and, Arman Sarukian doesn't even have a chance. I mean, all of these guys are top competitors. Any of them could go on to have an insane legacy. And I do think, it's possible for Khabib to be passed in the GOAT conversation of that particular division. So I hate that narrative, and it's pushed around quite a lot that Khabib will always be the GOAT of lightweight. And a lot of these are just delusional fans who are still living in 2016, He created the whole group of people who pick any fighters named end with V. OEV, EV, there's a bunch of casual fans that are like, oh, his name ends with the V, we gotta pick him, he's definitely gonna win this fight. Like, that's just not true at all. We've seen a lot of, fighters from that region, not live up to what these casual fans' expectations are. And I just think it's kind of annoying that people, pick fighters just based off their, last name. I mean, what are we picking people off these days? And another thing that's kind of weird, I mean, I wouldn't say annoying, but it's just kind of weird, is that he shows for his support for Putin and his attack on Ukraine publicly. I mean, anyone, advocating for mass genocide is kind of weird in my opinion, at the very least. I don't really think that's a great thing to support. But, whatever. I'm going to leave my hands off that. I don't want to get political or anything here. I'm not saying I support or don't support the attack on Ukraine. I just think it's a little weird that someone's, deciding to support a public figure like Vladimir Putin in the attack on Ukraine. Let's move on to the things I like about Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's a trailblazer for his country. I mean, so many of these Russian fighters are following in suit of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's inspired so many fighters, and I think that's beautiful, like that all these fighters want to live up to what the expectations that Khabib has set for his country, and, I think it drives a lot of fighters to this day. He respects his family. A lot of people are like, well, why did he retire? I mean, he said he was going to retire after the Gaethje fight because his father had passed away, and he, it was his plan for him to, do that. I don't remember all the details, but I just remember it was out of respect for his father was the reason he retired, and that's very admirable in a person. And he beat the dog shit out of Conor, okay? How can you not like that? I mean, I guess if you're a hardcore McGregor fan, you probably don't like the fact that he beat McGregor, but still, Conor tends to annoy me a lot, and he talked so much shit and was very racially insensitive or ethnically insensitive in the build-up to that fight and the whole Dolly incident. I mean, I feel like most of the people were rooting against McGregor in that fight, so it was quite satisfying to see Khabib talking to him on the ground, like, you talking now, brother, huh? That was a terrible impression, but either way, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I put a little bit of extra effort into it, making all the slides and stuff, so let me know if you want more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like down below, and I hope you have an amazing day.